So here we're going to have a look at this picture. Now this is one of the pictures from the beginning of our Tuesday book, and this is the starting page of where the frogs begin to fly. So what we need to do is we need to try and think of some speech that might be said to help understand this picture a little bit better. So I'm going to start with my first box up here on the left. So this is going to be a short introductory sentence about what is happening in my picture. So I'm going to write, the three frogs sat sleeping on their lily pads, oblivious to the humming sound approaching. So oblivious means they have no clue, no idea what's going on. They're completely clueless to that noise, okay? So that's just a little introductory paragraph about what's happening in this specific picture. So this is the introduction to our pictures. So I'm now going to think of some speech for this character. So this character could be talking to this character. He could be having some thoughts of his own. But because it's going to be speech, we know he's got to say something. So I'm going to do it so that he is saying something to this character here. Now I'm going to think of some names to give a little bit more of a good background to my story. So, Albert, is that you doing that? Okay. So he is talking to this frog here. So this frog is Albert. Now Albert's going to need a response to this question. Now looking at his facial expression, doesn't seem to quite know what's going on. He seems a little bit confused. So I need to think of a sentence that's going to answer that question where he's giving some impression that he's a little bit confused and he's not quite sure what's going on. So I don't think so. I don't know why it's happening and I don't like it. Okay, so I've added a little bit of speech in there to show that he's not quite sure what's going on. He clearly doesn't like it. Okay. So now I'm going to skip to this one here. So if I look at this picture, this frog is clearly saying something to this frog. So it could be that this frog says something first and this frog responds. Or maybe now that this frog is going up in the air, so this one, he starts speaking first and this frog speaks in response. So I'm going to use this character here. So, oh no, not me as well. Okay, so we can think of this one as maybe having a response, or maybe this frog gets involved. Okay, so let's have a think about what this frog might be saying. So it's always something with you two. So he doesn't sound particularly happy, but he's looking up at these two frogs here thinking, well, something's clearly going on. It always has got to be these two that's going on as well. So now this one's going to need a response. Now this one looks like he's responding to this frog here. So he might say, up here, I'll show you how to steer. Okay, so if we have a look at this whole thing all together, so the three frogs that sleeping on their lily pads are oblivious to the humming sound approaching. Albert, is that you doing that? I don't think so. I don't know why it's happening and I don't like it. Oh no, not me as well. It's always something with you two. Up here, I'll show you how to steer. So rather than having just the pictures, I've now given a little bit more context as to what could be being said in our picture, okay? So this could be the opposite of what our author has done, where maybe he's thought about the speech of what could be happening, and he's illustrated that through the idea of using pictures instead, okay? So my task now is, well, can I now use my speech burger and write that into a prose, so a written paragraph of full speech for each one of my speech bubbles? So let's have a look. So here is the speech that I have written out for this part of my picture. So let's have a quick read of it. So the three frogs sat sleeping on their lily pads, oblivious to the humming sound approaching. Albert, is that you doing that? Inquired Simon, looking curiously at him out of the corner of his eye. I don't think so, he exclaimed. I don't know why it's happening and I don't like it. Oh no, it's happening to me as well, moaned Bob, clearly unimpressed at whatever magical tricks someone was playing on him. Jim was unimpressed by the pair of them. It's always something with you two, he muttered peevishly under his breath. Up here, I'll show you how to steer, shouted Simon, beckoning to Bob from high up on his floating lily pad. Okay, so you can see that I've given my little froggy some names because when we are looking at conversations and speech, we need to have a response pattern. So in order to know who's speaking, I've allocated them names. Now it's important to remember who has said what beforehand so that you know you get the correct names in response. So using our speech burger, we need to consider the skills that I have used. So let's start with the very first sentence. So I've opened with my open speech marks. I need to make sure I have a capital letter. So I have a capital letter at the beginning. I then need to write my spoken sentence of speech. So Albert, is that you doing that? I then need to include a punctuation mark at the end. So I've decided to go for a question mark because I'm asking a question. And to close that sentence of speech off, I have to have my closed speech mark. So I have my closed inverted commas here. So just in that sentence alone, I have done exactly what I was expected to do, and I've used all 5 elements of my speech burger. Now I've added some additional information without using the word said. So inquired Simon. Now because I've added an extra sentence onto that, I've used my comma and I've explained looking curiously at him out of the corner of his eye. Now, because it's a new speaker, I need to make sure that my new speech goes on a new line. Now, it just so happens here, because I'd run out of space, it was on a new line anyway. But if you're writing along and you find you have a gap at the end of that sentence, because someone new is speaking, I must start a new sentence. So new sentence for a new speaker, so it has to go on a new line. So I don't think so, he exclaimed. I don't know why it's happening, and I don't like it. So here again, I've used my speech marks, I've used my capital letters, my sentence, my closed punctuation and closed speech marks, but I've split this sentence up like we did in my last example, okay? So I'm switching it up a little bit so that my sentence have a bit more of a flow. Now, because Bob now starts to speak, I need to have a new sentence, okay? So new speaker, new line. Oh no, it's happening to me as well, moaned Bob, clearly unimpressed at whatever magical trick someone was playing on him. Now I introduce a new character, Jim. Now before Jim says anything, I'm going to give a little bit of context. So Jim was unimpressed by the pair of them. So this tells me that he's now going to be speaking to both of the frogs. So here it says it's always something with you two. So we know he's talking to both of them. So I've introduced that a little bit in my sentence. Now I haven't got to the end of my sentence here. But because there was no one speaking in the lines before, I don't have to start a new line here, despite the fact that the last person to speak was Bob, but because there have been another sentence in between, I don't need to start a new line. So, it's always something with you two, he muttered peevishly under his breath. Now, because I didn't get to the end of this sentence and Simon starts to speak, I have to start it on a new line. Up here, I'll show you how to steer, shouted Simon, beckoning to Bob from high up on his floating lily pad. So, I have included my opening introductory sentence here at the top. And I've included 5 sentences of speech, okay? Now, I've used my speech burger to help me, and I've understood my rules of a new speaker on a new line, but I've also added additional information to my sentences, which I know from previous experience in Year 5, you guys are able to do, okay? So, your challenge is to do the same thing. So, in your pack, you will have a blank copy of this picture. On your picture, you need to have a think about what your introductory sentence might be and what these frogs might be saying. Okay, now at this point in time, you don't need to think of any character names, just speech of what they could be saying. Now, I do not want you to copy my example, so you will need to think of different examples of both the introductory sentence here and your 5 speech bubbles. Okay. If you are at school and you are sat with a partner and you'd like to do this together, then you can have a go at creating one between the two of you. If you are sat at home and have someone else to help you, you can bounce off some ideas off a parent or a guardian or a sibling that might be with you. If not, you can still have a go on your own, okay? Once you've done that, I would like you to then have a go at writing that in prose. So that is the full paragraph with all of your speech, which is what I did on the last slide. And I want you to make sure that you use your speech burger, so you have a copy of that at home with you as well. I want you to make sure that you've had a go at using all of the correct punctuation and the setup you need for speech. I would also like to have a go at writing the speech in the 2 different ways that I did. So you can write all of your speech and then your closing remark at the end, or you can write some of your speech with your remark in the middle and then the rest of the speech. I would also like you to add additional information that's happening in the picture. Okay, now you'll find all of those resources and all of the toolkits to help you in your pack that's been sent home to you. Okay. If you cannot print this picture off, it doesn't matter. You can draw the speech bubbles out onto your paper and maybe draw some little frogs at the bottom, and you can set this out on your paper on your own. It's not a problem, okay? But if you need some help and support, rewind this video and go back to the slides that I have just done to show you a model example of how you can set it out, okay? And I look forward to reading those when you have sent in some feedback for me to have a look at. All right, good luck, Year 5.